was sitting at my kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee when my world shattered into pieces. Not dramatically. Not with thunder or lightning or any of that movie stuff. It happened quietly, over the phone, in 4 words that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. We only invited special people. That's what my daughter-in-law said. That's what she threw at me like it was nothing. My name is Robert. I'm 67 years old. I spent 40 years as an accountant, and I'm pretty good at numbers. I'm good at seeing the bigger picture, the patterns, the things that don't add up. But somehow, I'd been completely blind to what was happening right in front of my face for the last 3 years. My son David called me that morning. No, actually, he didn't call me. His wife Emma did. She was the one who picked up the phone while I was watering my plants in the backyard. The same plants my late wife Susan planted before she died 6 years ago. I still take care of them. Someone has to remember her, right? Hi, Dad, Emma said. Her voice was different that day. Sharper somehow. We wanted to let you know that we got married yesterday. I thought I didn't hear right. I actually asked her to repeat it. We got married yesterday. It was just us and a couple of witnesses at City Hall. Very quick, very simple. My hands went numb. The watering can fell from my hand and water spilled all over my shoes. I didn't even notice. Where's David? I asked, my voice sounding weird to my own ears. He's here, but he's busy. Anyway, the reason I'm calling is, well, we need to talk about the apartment. The apartment, of course. That's what this was about, wasn't it? 3 years ago, David lost his job. He and Emma had been married for 2 years at that point, and they were struggling. I remember the phone call like it was yesterday. David was crying, actually crying, and asking if he could stay with me for a while. I said yes without hesitation. I didn't even think about it, but then David found a new job. Not a great job, but a job. A sales position that didn't pay very well, but kept the lights on. He and Emma wanted to get their own place. I wanted that too. Not because I didn't love having them around, but because I knew they needed their independence. So I did what any father would do. I paid the down payment. I co-signed the lease, and when they didn't have enough for the first month's rent, I made up the difference. That was 3 years ago. For 3 years, I'd been making that rent payment, $2,000 a month. I'd do the transfer every first of the month like clockwork. Sometimes I'd sneak in a little extra for groceries or utilities. I bought their furniture. I paid for the air conditioning when it broke. I gave them money for their car payment. I loaned them $5,000 when Emma wanted to start some business that never happened. I never asked them to pay me back. Not once. And then one day they got married without telling me. We only invited special people, Emma said, and I felt something break inside my chest. I'd driven past their apartment that day. I know, that sounds pathetic, but I wanted to surprise them with dinner. I saw the pictures on their Instagram later. Emma's parents were there, her siblings, people laughing and toasting champagne. They looked happy, genuinely happy, but I wasn't in any of those photos. When I finally got David on the phone that evening, he tried to spin it. Said it was just an intimate ceremony, just him and Emma and the witnesses. Said they wanted to keep it simple, just the two of them against the world kind of thing. But I'd seen the pictures. I'd seen her father standing next to David with his arm around him. I'd seen Emma's mother crying happy tears. I'd seen the bouquet in Emma's hands, the flowers I could have bought for her if I'd known about the wedding. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat in my study and stared at my bank statements. $2,000 a month for 36 months. That's $72,000 just on rent. Then there was furniture. $8,000 for a living room set. $3,000 for a bedroom suite. Another $1,000 for a kitchen table and chairs. $2,000 on a decent TV. Appliances, cookware, plates and glasses. Another $15,000 easy food. I probably spent $3,000 or $4,000 on groceries over the years, bringing over bags of stuff, helping them stock their fridge when money was tight. Emergencies. Emma's dental work, $2,000. David's car needed new tires. That was $600. Their hot water heater died. I paid for the replacement and the installation. Another $1,200 gifts. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. Probably another $5,000 there. I pulled out my calculator and added it all up. $137,000. That's how much I'd spent on my son and his wife in 3 years. $137,000 from the money my late wife left me. Money I was supposed to use to enjoy my retirement, to travel, to finally do all the things we'd planned to do together before she got sick. I sat there looking at that number for a long time. Then I did something I'd never done before. I closed my laptop, walked to my computer, and called my bank. The person I spoke to was named Michael. I'd been banking with this place for 20 years, and Michael had processed literally hundreds of transfers to David's account. He knew about my generosity because he'd commented on it a few times. Always kindly, always careful not to pry. But I could see the question in his eyes. Why? "I need to cancel the automatic transfers," I said. There was a pause. "Are you sure about that, Mr. Harrison? Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I lied. "I just need to stop them. Can you cancel them all? And I want to set up some security on the account so nobody else can access it." Michael didn't ask a lot of questions after that. Maybe he understood. Maybe he'd seen this before. Old guys like me finally waking up to the fact that their kids weren't really their kids. They were just creatures that looked like their kids with their hands out. The next day was Sunday. My phone started ringing around noon. David called first. I didn't pick up. Then Emma. I let that ring too. Then David again. Text message. "Dad, we need to talk." I deleted it. By 3 o'clock, David called me 4 more times. Finally, I turned my phone off completely. I went for a walk instead. Long walk, didn't really have anywhere to go. Just needed to get out of the house. The park was nice that day. I sat on a bench and watched people jogging, walking their dogs, throwing frisbees. Normal people doing normal things. I wondered how many of them were like me. How many had paid for their kids' entire lives only to get locked out at the wedding. I think I stayed in that park for 3 hours. When I got home, I found something that made my blood run cold. There were 2 cars parked in front of my house. I recognized both of them. One was David's. The other was a car I didn't know. Through the window, I could see them in my living room. David was sitting on my couch. Emma was pacing back and forth. And there was a man in an expensive suit going through my papers on my dining table. My papers. My personal documents. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Oh, Dad, thank God," Emma said, rushing toward me. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. "We've been looking for you everywhere. What's going on?" I asked, looking at the man with the papers. David looked miserable. The man in the suit stood up and extended his hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Dr. Vincent Morris. I'm a family law attorney. Your children hired me because they're concerned about your mental state." I felt something cold slide down my spine. "My mental state?" "Yes, sir. They're worried that you may be experiencing some kind of cognitive decline. The sudden change in your behavior, the financial decisions you've been making. We just want to make sure you're okay." I looked at David. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm fine," I said flatly. "Mr. Harrison, you've been managing your finances perfectly for 40 years. The lawyer said, in that smooth, practiced voice that lawyers use when they want to seem reasonable. "But in the last week, you've made some very sudden changes. You've cut off all financial support to your son without explanation. You've blocked access to your accounts. You won't answer their calls. These are signs that we should take seriously." Emma came closer, and her voice got all soft and fake concerned. "Dad, we're just worried about you. We know you've been lonely since Mom died. Maybe that's affecting your judgment." That's when I understood what was happening. They weren't here to check on me. They were here to take control of my money. "Get out of my house," I said. My voice surprised me. It was calm, but it had an edge to it that was sharp enough to cut glass. "Dad," David started. "Get out of my house." The lawyer tried to hand me some papers. I didn't even look at them. I just walked to the door and opened it wide. "This isn't over, Mr. Harrison," the lawyer said as he walked past me. "Your children have legal options." After they left, I locked the door and sat in my living room in the dark for a long time. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry exactly. I was something else. Something colder. Something that felt almost like clarity, but with a sharp, dangerous edge to it. The next morning I woke up different. I didn't recognize myself at first. Not in the mirror, I mean. I looked the same wrinkled face, same gray hair, same tired eyes. But inside, something had shifted. Something hard had crystallized inside me overnight. I got up, made coffee, and sat down at my desk with a notepad and a calculator. I was going to document everything. For 3 years, I'd kept records of every transaction, every receipt, every payment. That's what accountants do. We keep records. So now I laid it all out. Every single cent I'd given David and Emma. The numbers looked different written out like that. Somehow worse. More real. I called my lawyer that afternoon. His name was Michael Chen, and I'd known him since David was in high school. Michael didn't seem surprised to hear from me, but he was surprised when I told him what had happened. They're trying to have me declared incompetent, I said. Based on what? Michael asked. Based on the fact that I stopped giving them money. There was a long silence. Then Michael said something I needed to hear. This is elder financial abuse. It's a federal crime. And the fact that they entered your home without permission and went through your private documents is another crime. We need to document everything and file a police report. A police report against my own son. I didn't know how that made me feel. Sad, angry, betrayed, relieved. Maybe all of those things at once. Michael and I spent 2 hours on the phone that day. By the end of it, I had a plan. First, I would get new locks installed on my house. I gave David a key years ago, and I wasn't taking any chances. Second, I would install a security system with cameras so I could see who was coming to my house even when I wasn't there. Third, I would open a completely new bank account at a different bank. I'd move most of my money there, where David and Emma had no way to access it. Fourth, I would change my will. I called a locksmith that afternoon. The owner was a guy named Tom, who'd actually worked on my house before. When I told him I needed to change all the locks, he didn't ask questions, just nodded and said he'd come the next morning. Then I called his son, who installed security systems. The full package, I told him. I want to see everything that happens at this house from my phone. By the time I hung up, I felt like I had some control back. That's when my phone rang. It was Emma calling from a blocked number. She was crying. Dad, please talk to us. We're not trying to hurt you. We're just worried. If you're so worried about me, I said, why did you get married without inviting me? Another silence. We explained that already. It was you and your entire family, I interrupted. I saw the pictures. Your parents, your siblings, everyone. Everyone except me. Dad, that's not fair. You're taking that out of context. What's the context? Tell me, Emma. What context makes it okay to leave out your father-in-law? Your husband's father. She didn't have an answer. Listen to me, I said, and I meant every word. For 3 years I've paid for everything. Your apartment, your furniture, your food, your car. I've given you money every single month. I've never asked for anything in return except to be treated like I matter. And you couldn't even do that. You couldn't even tell me you were getting married. We do care about you. You care about my money. There's a difference. I hung up the phone and turned it off. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my brother. His name was James, and he lived in California. We drifted apart over the years. That's what happens when you get old and busy, but he was still my brother. Robert, is everything okay? He asked, and I could hear the concern in his voice. The genuine concern that nobody in my own household seemed to have. I told him everything. James listened without interrupting. When I was done, he said, I'm not surprised. You're not? I asked, not even a little bit. I saw this coming 3 years ago. Every time you mentioned David and Emma, it was about how much you were giving them, how generous you were being. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how. Say it now, I told him. David doesn't talk about you like a son talks about his father, James said quietly. He talks about you like he's listing out things you've bought him. I noticed it at Thanksgiving a couple years ago. He was bragging about the furniture you'd bought them, the money you'd given them, but there wasn't any love in it. It was just inventory that hit hard, but I needed to hear it. And Emma, James continued, that woman has always had her eye on your money. I don't know how else to say it. She married David because he had access to you, not the other way around. After we hung up, I sat in my study for a long time, thinking about all the Thanksgivings I'd hosted, all the Christmases I'd spent trying to make David happy, all the money I'd poured into his life like it was water. What had I gotten in return? A son who didn't really see me, a daughter-in-law who saw me as an ATM, a sense of obligation on their side, maybe, but no real love. The locks were changed on Tuesday. The security system went in on Wednesday. By Thursday, David had shown up at my house 4 times. The cameras caught every single visit. Him pacing in front of my house, him knocking on the door, him peering through the windows. He wasn't coming to see if I was okay. He was coming to see if he could get back in. The lawyer's letters started arriving on Friday. Dear Mr. Harrison, one of them began, your children have instructed us to inform you that they are pursuing legal action regarding your mental competency and financial management. I read it once and then put it in a folder. Michael Chen had told me to save everything, so that's what I did. On Saturday afternoon, David actually showed up in person. I watched him through the camera, then I buzzed the intercom without opening the door. What do you want? I asked. He looked directly at the camera. Dad, please, we need to talk about this. Emma's pregnant. I felt something twist in my chest. Emma was pregnant? My first grandchild? And he was telling me through an intercom. Congratulations, I said, my voice flat. That's wonderful. But I'm not opening the door until you tell me what this is really about. He was quiet for a moment. Then, the rent is due next week. We need you to make the transfer. There it was. That was the real reason. Not to check on me, not to reconcile, just to get the money. No, I said. Dad, no, I won't be making any more transfers. Your wife is pregnant, which means you need to start acting like adults who can support themselves. You have a job, David. Make it work. You can't just cut us off like this. We have obligations, bills. Emma's pregnant. She needs prenatal care. Then get a second job, I said. Do what I did when I was raising you alone after your mother died. Do what millions of people do every single day. Grow up. He stood there for a long moment, and I watched him through the camera as his face turned red. You're going to regret this, he said. Maybe, I replied, but not for the reasons you think. A week later, Michael Chen called me with bad news. They filed for guardianship, he said. They're claiming you're mentally incompetent and requesting that David be assigned as your legal guardian. If a judge agrees, he'll have control over your finances, your medical decisions, everything. I felt the fear spike, but I pushed it down. I'd been expecting this. What do we do? I asked. We fight, Michael said. But first we need to get you evaluated by a psychiatrist. Someone independent, someone who can testify that you're mentally competent. The psychiatrist's name was Dr. Susan Wells. She spent 4 hours with me, asking me questions, giving me tests, checking my memory and my reasoning and my ability to understand complex financial concepts. At the end, she looked at me over her glasses and said, Mr. Harrison, you're not only mentally competent, you're sharp as a tack. Your cognitive function is excellent. If anything, I'd say you finally started thinking clearly after a long period of self-deception. Those words were going to matter a lot in the coming months. The court date was set for a Wednesday in November. I wore a dark suit to court, the same one I'd worn to my late wife's funeral, actually. I figured if I was going to fight for my life in front of a judge, I might as well look respectable. Michael had warned me that this would be ugly. He'd warned me that David and Emma would say things designed to make me look like a confused old man. He'd warned me that their lawyer would try to paint my financial cutoff as a sign of mental decline, but I wasn't prepared for how much it would hurt to hear my own son lie about me under oath. David testified that I'd become erratic and paranoid, that I'd suddenly started isolating myself, that I'd become obsessed with the idea that my family was against me, that I'd hired lawyers and changed my locks like a madman. All signs of mental decline. None of it was true, but the way he said it, with such conviction, it almost sounded plausible. When Michael cross-examined him, things started falling apart. "Mr. Harrison," Michael said, "can you tell the court when was the last time you called your father without asking him for money?" David opened his mouth, then closed it. We talked about other things. I'm asking for a specific date. When was the last time you called your father just to see how he was doing? Just to chat? I don't remember exact dates. Is it true that you excluded your father from your wedding? It was a small ceremony. Is it true that when he asked why he wasn't invited, your wife told him that you'd only invited special people? David's face turned red. That was taken out of context. What context makes it okay to tell your father he's not a special person? The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Emma testified next, and she was better at lying than David. She cried when she talked about how hurt she was that I'd cut them off. She talked about how I'd been like a father to her, how she'd depended on me like a second parent. She talked about how afraid she was that I was losing my mind, that something bad would happen to me if I didn't have family support. It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her. Michael's cross-examination of her was even more devastating. "Mrs. Harrison, you testified that your father-in-law was like a father to you. How many times in the past 3 years have you called him just to chat, not to ask for money?" She paused. We've talked many times. How many specific times? Can you give me even one date when you called just to say hello? She couldn't. Is it true that you got married and excluded your father-in-law from the ceremony? It was private. Is it true that when he asked why, you told him you'd only invited special people? I didn't mean it that way. How else could that possibly mean? How is there another way to interpret those words? She didn't have an answer. Then Michael presented the evidence. He presented my tax returns showing my perfect financial management for 40 years. He presented letters from my brother and from my former colleagues at work testifying to my mental competence. He presented bank statements showing that I'd given David and Emma over $137,000 over 3 years. Your Honor, Michael said in his closing argument, what we're seeing here is not a case of an old man losing his mind. What we're seeing is a case of financial abuse. The parents have been systematically extracting money from Mr. Harrison for 3 years. When he finally cut off the money, a decision that was entirely within his rights, entirely rational, entirely his choice to make, they responded by trying to have him declared incompetent. This is elder abuse, plain and simple. The judge, a woman named Judge Patricia Richardson, listened to everything. She looked at me. She looked at David and Emma. She looked at all the papers on her desk. Then she announced her decision. After reviewing all the evidence, she said, "It is clear to this court that Mr. Robert Harrison is in full possession of his mental faculties. He is competent to manage his own affairs. His decision to stop providing financial support to his adult son and daughter-in-law is entirely his right and entirely rational. The request for guardianship is denied. Furthermore, I am awarding Mr. Harrison a temporary restraining order. The defendants are not to contact him, approach his residence, or attempt to access his accounts without legal representation present." I felt something release in my chest. I'd won. Walking out of the courthouse, I didn't feel victorious or vindicated. I just felt tired. Tired and sad about what my son had become. That night, my brother called me. "You did it," he said. "I know," I replied. "How do you feel?" I thought about that for a long moment. "Relieved," I finally said. "But mostly I just feel sad. I feel sad about what he's become. I feel sad about all those years I wasted trying to make him happy. I feel sad about the grandson I'll probably never meet." "You might," James said gently. "People can change. Maybe one day he'll understand what he did." "Maybe," I said. "But that's not my problem anymore." My problem now is figuring out what to do with the rest of my life. After the trial, I made some changes. I hired a real estate agent and sold my house. It had too many memories, too many ghosts. I bought a condo in the city instead, something smaller and easier to maintain, somewhere I could start fresh. I took half the money I'd saved and donated it to organizations that help elderly people who've been financially abused by their families. The other half I started using for me. For the first time in decades, I was spending money on myself without feeling guilty about it. I took a painting class. I'd always wanted to paint, but Susan and I had never had time for that kind of thing. Now I had all the time in the world. I took a trip to Italy, something Susan and I had always talked about but never did. I spent 3 weeks there, just walking around, looking at art and old buildings, eating good food. I thought about Susan a lot while I was there. I think she would have liked it. I joined a volunteer group that helped other elderly people deal with financial abuse. I went to support group meetings. I met other people like me, people whose kids had tried to take advantage of them, people who'd been lied to and manipulated and hurt by their own families. One guy, named Harold, he'd been through something almost identical to what I experienced. He told me something that stuck with me. The hardest part isn't the money you've lost. It's grieving the relationship you thought you had. He was right. The money was just money. I'd earned it once, and I could earn more if I needed to. But the relationship I thought I had with my son, that wasn't something I could get back, because it had never really existed in the first place. 6 months after the trial, I got a letter. It was from Emma's lawyer, and it was a settlement proposal. They'd calculated how much I'd owed them in terms of financial support, and were offering to drop all their legal claims if I paid it. I laughed when I read it. I actually laughed out loud. Then I threw it away. I never heard from David again. My brother told me later that David and Emma had moved to another city. He'd gotten a new job, something better paying. Last my brother heard, they were doing okay financially without my help. Good. That meant they'd finally learned how to take care of themselves. It's been a year now since that phone call where I learned about the secret. Wedding. I'm sitting on the balcony of my new condo, looking out over the city. I have a cold beer in my hand and a painting I started last week on an easel in the corner. It's a painting of Italy from the trip I took. Sometimes I think about David. I think about what he'd be like now if I'd never given him that first check 3 years ago. Would he be a better man? Would he have learned responsibility sooner? Or would he have just found someone else to take advantage of? I don't know. And honestly, that's not my problem anymore. I've learned a lot this year about what really matters. It's not how much money you have or how much you can give to other people. It's about respect. It's about genuine connection. It's about surrounding yourself with people who care about you as a person, not just as a wallet with legs attached. My brother calls me every Sunday now. My friend Harold and I get lunch together every couple weeks. The painting class has turned into a real social thing. We're talking about doing an exhibition of our work next fall. None of these people care about my money. They care about me. About what I think, what I feel, what matters to me. That's the difference I'm learning to understand. The other day, I was telling Harold about how David used to promise to come visit but never did. How he was always too busy. Does that bother you? Harold asked. I thought about it. Not like it used to, I said. At first it hurt. But now I realize, if he doesn't want to see me, that's his loss. I'm pretty good company these days. Harold laughed. Yeah, you are. I think that's the real victory here. Not that I won the court case. Not that I kept my money safe. The real victory is that I finally figured out that my worth as a person doesn't depend on what I do for other people. I'm still a good man. I'm still generous. I still want to help people, but now I do it for people who deserve it. People who actually appreciate it. People who see me as a human being and not as a source of income. My name is Robert. I'm 68 years old, and I finally learned to love myself the way I'd been trying to love my son. It only took me 68 years to figure out that I mattered too. Sometimes I drive past the old house, the one I sold. There's a young family living there now. I watched them move in with their kids, and I thought about all the family moments I'd tried to create in that house. All the holidays I'd hosted, all the dinners I'd cooked, all the love I'd poured out. None of it was enough for David. But you know what? That's okay. Because I'm finally pouring that love where it belongs, on myself. And I've got to tell you, I'm worth it.